Speaking of people with problems, let's transition to the big news out of Florida yesterday, where former President Donald Trump was actually in a courtroom. He pleaded not guilty to all of those charges against him in the sensitive documents, the classified document case. Again, he is the first U.S. president, either current or former, to be indicted with a criminal indictment on a federal level. This is from the BBC, who had a reporter in the courtroom. Quote, he appeared somber and subdued in court, sitting in a dark suit and red tie with his arms crossed, which Ryan just mocked up so perfectly for everyone to see. This is the Trump lawyer says, quote, we most certainly enter a plea of not guilty. By the way, we should mention it is Donald Trump's 77th birthday today. In honor of Donald Trump's 77th birthday, I think, Ryan, we should roll probably the 77th funniest clip of Trump ever, which is from a speech he gave yesterday after appearing in court, which CNN and MSNBC, by the way, refused to air because they said it would be just like a campaign ad.
Well, people missed out because absolutely iconic moment, maybe even his epitaph. I like to picture him as entering his plea to the court with this right here. We can roll A5.
I did everything right and they indicted me.
Ryan he loves this clip so much. I've already seen it like 10 times this morning.
Maybe it can be my ringtone.
Oh, you should have it be your ringtone.
I did everything right and they indicted. And you pointed out earlier, it sounds like he's doing an impression of himself.
It does.
It's like a Trump impersonator.
It does. And again, there were videos. So basically, here's the timeline of events. Trump shows up in court, pleads not guilty. There's all kinds of, sort of the usual media circus outside of the courtroom. He then he's in the car, he starts posting to Truth Social things like, quote, one of the saddest days in the history of our country. We are a nation in decline. That seems to have been something he posted while he was in the motorcade, leaving the courtroom, going to Trump National Doral. He then shows up, or maybe this was right after the courtroom, he goes to Versailles, so a Cuban spot in Little Havana, starts meeting with Trump supporters.
Prayed with them.
He prayed with them. They sing happy birthday to him. And this is another thing that corporate press cut away from because they said it looked like a campaign ad. They didn't want people to see it. There's enough of this. I think Jake Tapper in particular pulled away from it and said, we've seen enough. And then he gives this speech later that evening, which the CNN and MSNBC also don't cover because, again, they say the usual sort of, it's full of lies, which I'm sure it was.
Nicole Wallace even asked them to take the VO, which is like the kind of the B-roll playing in the background, off because it was distracting from the brilliant words of the MSNBC commentators. It's like, come on.
That's really rich coming from Nicole Wallace, who lied from the podium during the Bush administration professionally.
She did do that.
I wanted to ask you about this one quote from Trump's lawyer who said outside, quote, we are at a turning point in our nation's history. The targeting prosecution of a leading political opponent is the type of thing you see in dictatorships like Cuba and Venezuela. What is being done to President Trump should terrify all citizens of this country. I want to ask you about that in particular because I think that's a preview of a huge part of the messaging strategy throughout the campaign and in the primary as well, that Donald Trump is a target of something transformative in the country. Like if you are concerned, if you have that sort of hazy feeling that something's wrong in the United States, you need look no further than what's happening to Donald Trump. This is the sort of pinnacle of America's transformation from republic to banana republic. And especially in places like Florida, he goes to Versailles right afterwards in Little Havana and starts making this argument. I think that's really interesting. I think there's definitely something, and I'll talk about this in my monologue, with the fact that he's actually, if he wins the primary, which he's the front runner right now, he's likely to face Joe Biden. It's Joe Biden who appointed the special counsel and Merrick Garland who ultimately has purview over the special counsel. I think that's an impactful, a consequential argument to take to the campaign trail.
I think it's certainly the best argument that they have at this point. And I think that both things can be true. I think it is crossing some type of a Rubicon. And also, Trump just walked right into it. I think it was Cernovich's response, one of the right-wing influencer, who said that they are unfairly targeting Trump, but also Trump walked right into this. Trump fell into a trap. However you want to describe it, you read that indictment, you're just shaking your head all the way through.
Right.
You're like, how can a criminal be this stupid in the commission of his criminality? A, he had unilateral authority to declassify documents, yet caught a classified document charge. Like, that's level of idiocy, number one, right there. Second, he was willing, at one point, talking to his lawyers, to destroy the documents to try to get out of the jam he was in, which means he would no longer have the documents, which means he's okay not having the documents, which means just give them back, man.
Right.
And then you're out of this. Like, then you're out of trouble. Even if you moved boxes around and did shenanigans for months, if you eventually gave the documents back, there's no way the prosecutors could come and say, well, he held on to these documents for longer than we would have liked, therefore we're going to launch the first prosecution of a former president. Like, no way, I think, would they have gotten away with that. Only his actions in this case made it possible for them to do it. Now, I'm excited for a bigger case to come. Like that, I don't get excited about seeing a president get locked up over paperwork and classified document stuff. Rather, I would like to see him prosecuted for a coup attempt or something bigger. Like, let's go to the
Georgia
heart.
Case.
Yeah, let's go to the heart of the system and like actually battle it out there. Otherwise, I say leave it to the voters.
No, I mean, obviously leave it to the voters is my position on that as well. Now, we should say there is no trial date yet set. It is still supposed to be handled by Eileen Cannon. It's on her docket. She's a federal district judge in South Florida, actually was appointed by Donald Trump. So there may be interesting developments in that case. And let's put up A3. This is a thread from Jonathan Turley, who has actually really defended. He's a professor at the GW, George Washington University Law School. If you watch Fox, you'll see Jonathan Turley fairly frequently. He is sort of a defender of Donald Trump against the excesses of the, what would you say, like the intelligence community, the DOJ, the FBI over the last several years. Really cogent, I think, helpful arguments in many cases that you don't hear in corporate press, but that are actually like substantive and helpful. He says, though, that there's an ironic element to the pile-on in these cases. With the cases in New York, 2 cases in New York, Miami, and then 1 expected in Georgia, Trump's dance card is filling up fast. While federal cases are often given priority, the multiple fronts could reduce the window for the federal trial. Why does that matter? Well, because we are 6 months out from actually being in a presidential year. The Republican primary has already started in earnest. What do you make of that point, Ryan?
Great point. He's got so many charges, they don't have time to try him. And the other point that I think people are missing is that, let's say by some miracle you get through this trial, you get to the conviction phase, he's found guilty, which I think a jury of all Trump supporters would find him guilty in this case, because there is, I feel like there's still a sanctity in the jury process and in the criminal justice system that people feel, even as they might hold contradictory opinions about the nature of the republic, et cetera. I do think even a Trump-impaneled jury, Trump-supporting impaneled jury would be like, yeah, you did this. Like, you're guilty of at least some of these counts. But let's say that happens. There's then sentencing. So he's released, awaiting sentencing. Then there's the appeals. And Eileen Cannon is going to allow him to go free, obviously, during the appeals process. And as long as that's playing out, I think this just becomes a news event rather than something that puts him like behind bars, even with a conviction, until the election. Like, I don't see any way that this gets done before the election. But I mean, we'll see. You could save this clip and play it if he's getting hauled off in handcuffs before the election.
Yeah, well, it doesn't seem like any of this is likely to be resolved before the election at all, which, again, to the other point about the potency of the campaign argument about being the target of the sort of transition to Banana Republic America, which, if you think that we've become a Banana Republic, you may think that that started a long time before the Trump indictments, but if you don't think we've become a Banana Republic, that's another question. I'm going to get into a lot of this in our block later in the show, so I don't want to get too far deep in the weeds.
We do have
here.
a little more complaining from Trump, I think.
Yes.
We roll this, what was it, A2, I think. This is some more gripes from former President Donald Trump.
Today we witnessed the most evil and heinous abuse of power in the history of our country. Very sad thing to watch. A corrupt sitting president had his top political opponent arrested on fake and fabricated charges of which he and numerous other presidents would be guilty. Right in the middle of a presidential election, in which he is losing very badly. This is called election interference and yet another attempt to rig and steal a presidential election. More importantly, it's a political persecution like something straight out of a fascist or communist nation. This day will go down in infamy, and Joe Biden will forever be remembered as not only the most corrupt president in the history of our country, but perhaps even more importantly, the president who, together with a band of his closest thugs, misfits, and Marxists, tried to destroy American democracy.
Marxist never sounds like natural coming out of it. It's always off a teleprompter.
You know Trump thinks a lot about Marxism. On that note, let's roll a 4. This is Marco Rubio making a connection sort of back to, again, this clear messaging that's, I think, probably potent with a certain swath of the electorate, connecting the dots between all kinds of crazy things that people might see happening in their world and the indictment itself.
You think this ends here? The next Republican president is going to be under tremendous pressure to bring charges and indict Joe Biden, his family, his crackhead son, whoever. The pressure is going to be extraordinary. They're going to turn us into, so we're decadent and we're in decline because we thought we could do anything we wanted with our economy. We could send our jobs and factories overseas, break our politics, break our culture, break our society. We don't need parents. We don't need neighborhood. We don't need family anymore. All these crazy ideas. And now reality's catching up.
No doubt we are in some type of vicious cycle. We'll see where it heads. We'll keep covering that.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.